Well, no, we don't. We're going to college because we're hoping to get, jobs not in hat factories. But it's important to recognize the Designated Suppliers Program would affect workers in the USA. In fact, right now, we're actually engaged in a campaign about the New Era factory in Mobile, Alabama that does make the UW's hats. So we're trying to have solidarity with workers worldwide. The fact of the matter is we have a global economy, and of the 3,000 factories that the UW sources from, in fact, you can see them all online at the Workers' Rights Consortium's website. Some are from the US, some are abroad. We see our role, not as necessarily going, into the factories to try and join the labor movement, but to empower their labor movement through the venues. What I said about our sphere of influence as students, we have a lot of privilege to be on this campus in a way that we can, address President Emmer, that those union, workers in Mobile, Alabama, or in the Dominican Republic don't necessarily have. There was a question here.
My name is Fred Heisen with the Freedom Socialist Party. I just wanted to say I think the SLAP did a really good job in organizing. And I think having that international perspective, rather than just focusing on your own life and your own career, is very important. To follow up on what Jeremy was talking about in terms of the Northwest and anti-cap organizing, I was able, through my union, to start a campaign to get labor to put some pressure on President Costa Rica not to adopt approved CAFTA. That included the Washington State Labor Council, but Council 28 state employees, many of who worked here on campus. Ultimately, the head of the AFL-CIO sending a letter down to the president of Costa Rica, talking about how this has been injured not only workers in their country, but workers internationally. That prompted the president to give up on trying to get it to the legislature and set up a referendum and popular vote on it, which was very close and through U.S. manipulation was railroaded through. But it still was a big plus for the people down there who have been in contact with, to have that kind of feeling of people here behind them. I have to agree too that we really have to solve the problem here, because the large corporations and other banks and investment houses based here, and the problem really is with the system. It's a structural problem. Everybody gets exploited as a worker, but it's just a degree of how much. And the people in power are in power because they have less money, because they benefit from that exploitation. You have to change that power paradigm so that working people and women and poor people and people of color and immigrants are the ones that are making the decisions.
Yeah, you're in Margaret.
I just wanted to respond to the very first question about what is taught in management schools. I just graduated from this school's executive program. I'm the 4th cohort, which means that I'm the 4th year. And I can tell you without a doubt, yes, they teach us to think about things besides the bottom line. So I hope that alleviates your concerns.
I actually want to address the question of the first two speakers, Wondwossen and Lupe. What I hear emerging from your descriptions, and it sort of resonates with what was being discussed this morning, is that there needs to be some rethinking of how to organize the workers, as well as the owners, who are sometimes workers, some often not. And I was beginning to hear some notions of a new kind of labor strategy that may depend on unions and may not. That seems to involve, in your case, Wondwossen, some kind of interaction with the government as well as with the actual employer or the producers cooperative. And in your case, Lupe clearly is related to some kind of campaign that's directed farther up the supply chain and may involve a coalition of a different sort than Wondwossen was talking about. But I'd like to hear you both elaborate that a little bit, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Those are the things we really need to explore, it seems to me, to be able to start to help serve the interests that you're trying to represent.
I totally agree, and I think that's the point that I want to make. Let me point out to the Ethiopia and Starbucks dispute and how it ended. First of all, I mean, when you see it from the Ethiopian farmer's perspective, fair trade is some sort of, some people out there in the West who try to help. and that's why I wanted to get involved, because it's not like some people out there, but I am, I'm from Ethiopia, I know the problem, and I get involved. That is that notion, that perception of like being at the receiver's end. The other problem is the governments themselves. I mean, the governments themselves are powerless, but they pretend to be powerful. For instance, the Ethiopian Starbucks dispute, it was resolved in such a way that the government and the corporate management signed some sort of confidentiality agreement, so the public doesn't know what they agreed. And they signed, that's it. Now, when you see it from the fair trade advocates' point of view, we want to know if what the government signed really benefits the farmers. We do not. And the fair trade certification process itself doesn't have any say. I mean, it's like vague thing. So I think there needs to be some redesigning. Because, okay, the certification process itself needs to say something about these governments and the corporations themselves. Okay, only because they signed the agreement does it mean that Starbucks is now corporate, socially responsible out of the blue. I don't know for sure because there is no way to measure that. So there needs to be some process system that where we all of us can say, okay, yes, because of these things, this company is really socially responsible and they've done something good. The same thing with the governments. I mean, we need to say, is the government really serving the people or not? Or the people, I mean, the bottom line is serving the people, isn't it? So how do people be benefited? So what I am thinking is, of course, there are all sorts of discussions out there as to how to redesign this fair trade certification process. But what I'm thinking is, okay, we need to have a grade, some sort of agreed grade that serves both the corporations and the people. And that grade, some people suggested like we use this orange and red color, for instance, like 100%, which is a good one now these days. But different sets of colors. Yeah, and 100% fair traders are really, I mean, you can tell they are committed to the betterment of the people. Whereas the rest, well, are they? So in such a way, I think that, yes, there needs to be a design.
I think there's like 3 different models of organizing. One is kind of organizing at the plant, under the National Labor Relations Act. And that really was never an option for farm workers because farm workers were excluded, so that's why they had to be very imaginative and go after boycotts and the corporate campaigning model. And even with regular labor, that's not working anymore. The law is so weak and enforcement is non-existent that it's actually now used against unions that are trying to organize. And even mainline unions like the UFCW have realized that after trying to organize the world's largest pork-producing plant, Smithfield in Tar Heel, North Carolina, for the last 12 years, not getting anywhere. Now they've adopted some of the tactics first pioneered by the farm workers, going after the corporate campaign and getting church support from civil rights leaders and keeping organizing on the ground, but also doing a corporate leverage type of campaign. And so that's kind of like one model. That's the first model kind of changed. In the farm worker situation where you don't have laws, the only option is the corporate campaigning model. And there's a lot of variations on that. Like the Farm Labor Organizing Committee in Ohio pioneered the model where you go after the end buyer because they're the ones that really have the purchasing power in the tomato soup boycott back in the 70s. And in that case got Campbell's to put more money down at the bottom